All right, so our first JavaScript the Weird Parts lectures. So the thing you can get used to when you see JSWP and then else and a number is it's always JavaScript the Weird Parts. So having said that, and I've mentioned it before, but you get that off of Udemy. I believe in the syllabus I quoted it as $21, but several students have already told me, which I'm happy to see, that they were able to get it for 10, which is what I got it for as well. Okay, and this course is really awesome. I have watched it from, well, you can see how far I'm into it. I'm almost completely through it. But at least the lectures that you're going to do, I've watched several times and listened to and digested, because these are really great concepts to understand. And I've talked to JavaScript programmers who say even people that are junior or beginning or intermediate developers don't understand some of the concepts that are laid out in this course, and that they really see that by understanding the language itself, the way it works, you know, some of the things that people refer to as the weird parts of JavaScript are really, and I've said this before, because people don't understand the language. And like any language, there are definitely shortcomings, there's no doubt. But newer versions of the language have really done a lot to bring the language into the modern development requirements that we have. So anytime anybody tries to bash JavaScript, tell them, well, you probably just don't understand it. And that's okay. All right. So anyway, I just can't speak highly enough of this course. I'm looking at his other course, possibly for Node.js, although there's another class I found for Node that I really like. So we'll see if you continue next semester into 94. So for this, just to say, so from here on, when you see JavaScript the Weird Parts, right, and this video will probably serve for future just references for you to understand what I want in the work, but where I also see that I want to go over specific things, you will see new videos when we're doing these items. Okay, so what you can see in the write-up is it says complete section 1. So, you know, if you're using this again for another, if I've used this as a future one, just make sure you read carefully which ones I want. So in this case, if you look, this section 1, so you're going to watch all of this, and then 2-7, right? So you want to watch through 7 on all of these, okay? Now this first part of the class is concepts for the most part. Now once we get in past this first chunk, then I'll have you do code along, which really I find very helpful to grasp these concepts, is to actually do what Tony does. And it can be a little deceiving at sometimes the way he explains things, because he's pretty slow sometimes, he's very methodical, which is, by the way, good programming skills when you go through things in an amazing amount of detail, but at the same time covering it in a way that hopefully is, for you, I know it was for me, digestible. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about, so now that you know what you need to do, I want you to create a new file in our repo, and this will be off the learn subdirectory, okay? And I've told you here what I suggest the name of the file to be. So I've already coded mine up, but I just want to show you and walk you through how to do this, okay? So when you're in the learn directory, this is our first item in here, so there's nothing in here yet. And by the way, I always like to make sure before I start anything, I do git status, so that I know, do I have anything that I need to commit or add into the repo? Because at this point, if you've changed anything, which I did before I came in, have a few things I needed to make sure that I had added, committed, and pushed. Right, so that's our workflow, and you'll see that in the write-up when I go and look at it in a minute. Okay, so in here we're going to create a new file, and again, using VS Code, there's multiple ways to do anything. You can actually right-click here, create a file, but I really like, because once I really like using the interface on VS Code. So then once I'm in that selected directory, I hit new file, and I'm going to call it JS Weird Parts, and then the number here indicates the one you're ending with, HTML. Okay, so then what I do is the exclamation point tab for the emit commands. Again, they make your life so much easier. And then in the document here, make sure you've placed at least something in there showing what it is, like what we're covering. The document title reflects what the document is. And I'd already done it, so I'm just going to grab to show you, right? So in my case, and I'll just copy this into my new file so you can see it, right? And that's the other thing I really want you to know is everything I've asked students to do here, I've done myself. So I get an idea. It's good for me. Keeps me aware, keeps me connected with the material. So here's what you can see, and here's the suggestion. A suggestion. Now I want some kind of outline when you're looking at this. So I have an H1. Actually, I noticed I didn't document. Oh, it's because I just created it on my local. Because remember, as you're watching this, I'm actually making myself use the Windows environment because I normally use the Mac environment. So it really gives me that sense of what hopefully somebody new into this may feel. So I'm like, I would have always done this, but it's because I just created it. So in H1 for week 3 JavaScript Weird Parts section 1, so you see H2 for section 1 and then H3 for introduction to this course, and then I used an unordered list, okay, and then I did the items themselves. And so you can see this is the level of notes that I took, okay? And again, I'm looking for here, did you grasp these concepts, or at least did you cover the whole video? You don't have to understand it all, but did you at least from your notes cover the major concepts in those videos, okay? So I almost said don't do the setup, but I decided after looking at it again, it is really helpful. Tony uses brackets.io, which I've used before as an editor. Interestingly enough, on his newer video, he is using VS Code. So I thought, oh, that's great. Even Tony's using VS Code. Many people are these days. So now that I've placed that file in there, I've completed all of it. You only have to do one commit here. Now, in the next item, which will be our first Big Nerd Ranch front-end development, I'll actually have more specifically how many commits I want you to do, but for this assignment, because we're still getting used to the workflow, right, we're going to do it. So I'm going to go over here, and by the way, I again recommend you use the command line for your Git workflow. Now, and I say that because, and I'm sure you've seen it by now, there is a nice interface that I suggest later, because if you lean upon this interface without getting used to the command line, there's going to be other times it's going to be harder for you to do things at the command line. So just make yourself use the command line. Okay, let me go back to the file. So, so before I do this, let's just walk through so to make sure, because I actually did do this out. So I also want you to update your index.html file in your root to include the completed HTML file that we've created here. And then I've just outlined the normal workflow we have so far. Again, this will change over time a little bit, and then submit your URL. Okay, so back here, back in our code editor, so the other thing I would need to do is open up that index file, right, and then add a new under learn. So we're under learn here, and you can do this part, UL, right, and then LI, right, and then you would add a link to there. And again, this is your process. I'm not going to do it all in detail. It just takes too much time. But hopefully you have this down, and you have already done this for 2 of your other items due so far, so this is not new. One inconsistency, and I think I talked about when I did it, when I looked at it today, kind of bothered me, was on the apply. I believe not the apply. It was on the practice. Yeah, on practice. I'm not sure why I did capital C there. I think I was just, sometimes we go too far with what's called camel case, and in files typically you don't use camel case. It's generally all lowercase unless you have a specific need. So I looked at that and went, oh, I'm gonna so redo that. But anyway, so make sure you update that index file, right? So when you do git status right now, you should have, and I know it's a little bit out of the visual here, I can always use my arrow keys right here. right, to go up. So I have my modified index file, but the thing is I don't see yet, I have something in learn, but I haven't added it. So what I'd need to do, right? And there's different commands here. You could actually add the JS, and you'd actually have to go in, I believe, let's actually try that. Could I just add JS weird parts 7? I'd have to go in. That's what I was wondering. Do I have to go into learn to do that? And I do. Add, and then JS weird parts 7.html. Oh, there we go, right? So now I get status. So the other way I would have done this, I'm going to back up one directory, is I would have just done, and you see this in black canvas, is I just did a period actually. Is that right? Just to add, oh, period or star I believe works the same to add those whatever is outstanding. Okay, so then of course you do your git commit with your message, right? Adding, make sure, adding week 3 JS weird parts lecture 7. Okay, good. So then git push. So from here on out, I'll probably just outline these commands rather than to actually go through them, because I'm hoping by now you have them, right? But just to walk through this final step, I'd make sure my files are, and I've just uploaded them. So now I see my learn and that I see my file. So, but what you're giving me, right, is a link here, the URL to this, right? So that's the process you need to do when you submit the work. That's the current workflow that we have. Here's what you need to do. Hopefully you found this of help, but some of you may have like, oh, I got this, I know how to do it. That's cool too. Recommend highly you really take the time to digest Tony's JavaScript the Weird parts. It will help you really later on when you start to try to troubleshoot your code, because if you understand the way it works, you will more easily understand where your code was probably went wrong. And I love what Tony says about the idea of, don't imitate, understand how the language works. All right, talk to you later. Bye.